We have the same process, though, no matter where a client comes from or a prospect comes from. We have the exact same process. We have a quick introductory call, get to know them on a human level, not just about assets under management. We've never had a minimum. We don't work with clients in that way. But we want to understand who you are as a person because that's the best fit for us. If we have a good vibe there, if we've got a good connection there, I know that you'll be a relatively good client for us as a firm.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to From the Ground Up. I'm Zach Conway. I'm here with Kelsey McKenna. Kelsey, I feel like we're not going to be able to go back to regular episodes of the podcast moving forward. I think I'm sort of like addicted to what we've been doing lately, which is our Advisor Growth Stories series. It's kind of making our, what we think are good ideas and how we think about the future of the industry and advisor growth a little more tangible. We're bringing some real stories to life. So tell us who's joining us today and what stories we're going to get to talk about.
Yeah, I'm really excited too, because this is like selfishly a chance for me to go so in the weeds with advisors who are building really great firms, really great practices. And so I'm very excited to welcome today Melissa. Oh no, I'm going to mess it up. Reaktenwalt. I said it right before the episode, Melissa. You say it. Say it, please. I just messed it up.
Reaktenwalt, like wrecking ball.
Reaktenwalt.
Yeah,
It's because
it's the beginning.
It's the beginning. I'm so sorry, Melissa. And Melissa and I have talked a lot. We've known Melissa for quite some time here. So it's just funny. I never call you by your full name, Melissa. But Melissa comes from EViE Financial, founder and CEO of EViE. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for coming on to share your advisor growth story. We're so excited to have you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we would love to just kick it off with you telling us a little bit about EViE and about what your firm does and who you serve.
Sure, absolutely. And thanks so much for having me. I'm stoked to be here. And no one ever says my full name, so don't worry. Melissa is just fine on for anything. But EV Financial, I founded EV Financial in 2018 after meandering quite a bit in my career with a couple of different firms, a couple of different infrastructures of those firms. Lots of different flavors of financial services work, but all as an advisor. And I started EViE just kind of based on that experience and wanting to do something a little bit different and focus more on the things that were important to me and the values that I really appreciated in myself, and then also working with clients. So EViE is all about education first and whole person financial planning and wealth management, all kind of focused around that values. We call it a values through line or a values focus for clients. So that's who EViE is, at least currently.
Yeah, that's awesome. And maybe you could share just kind of who you serve. So I know you have two different kind of personas that you focus on primarily, but maybe you could tell us a little bit about that and then also where you're at stage of growth, right? Growth wise. So how many households you currently serve?
Yeah, absolutely. As a firm, we serve just over 300 households currently, which feels insane most days because we're still relatively small.
Yeah.
But we've had such an interesting journey. But currently, we've got two kind of main subsets of clients. Most of these are sort of age-based. We have our who I call young guns, who are not actually young guns anymore, but I say we all kind of came up together. Candidly, I'm an elder millennial. A lot of these clients are in that millennial subset, getting into that kind of groove in their career, earning a really, kind of nice or high salary, just trying to figure it out on the financial planning and wealth management side of the line. That's probably about half of our client base. The other half are maybe what I would call their parents, but came to us for the retirement side of the line, focused much more on that sort of what I call the down the mountain journey in retirement, figuring out what that looks like for them on a planning note, kind of holistically. Both subsets of those clients focus a lot on financial planning, and that's what we do as a firm. So, but those two subsets kind of make up the majority of our clients.
Got it. And so as of this moment, I know you do
Mm.
acquire new customers fairly regularly. So what are your kind of primary channels? How are you getting in front of these two subsets of clients and then actually kind of moving them toward becoming a customer as of today?
Yeah, absolutely. So, that's been certainly a journey also. I was about to start down, oh, this is the path that we take for getting new prospects coming in and talking to them and converting them into clients of EV. That has changed over the last 18 months or so. The majority of our clients now come in, or our prospects come in, from direct referrals, which is a beautiful place to be, and a thing that I think a lot of advisors just kind of just put a lot of weight on, like, oh, this is where you want to be in your career. And it feels nuts to then be there to where, like, yeah, I think 80% of our new folks that came in last year were from direct referrals from current clients or other prospects that we've kind of come in contact with. Um, Again, it is a beautiful place to be. But also, we realize that there's some other marketing that we want to be doing, and some other kind of lead gen that we want to focus on. So I also do a lot of public speaking, and a lot of that came from my kind of desire and just sort of natural, um, yeah, I guess desire is the right word, natural desire to teach. I do that one on one with clients, and started doing that one to many in seminars and workshops relatively early in my career. That's ended up being some turning into a lot of other things that have then led to also a relatively organic, lead generation kind of pipeline for us. But two very distinct things that happen for people to kind of come into our firm. Um, we have the same process though, no matter where a client comes from or a prospect comes from, we have the exact same process. We have a quick introductory call, get to know them on a human level, not just about assets under management. We've never had a minimum. We don't work with clients in that way. Um, but we want to understand who you are as a person because that's the best fit for us. If we have a good vibe there, if we've got a good connection there, I know that you'll be a relatively good client for us as a firm. So we go through that introductory discussion just to say, hey, who are you? What do you need? Are we a fit for all of those things? Um, for the referrals that come in, and this is why obviously advisors want this as the place that we all get to, that sort of pinnacle of growth, because all of these folks have a pretty good idea of what they're getting into, because they have that sort of initial, hey, I met with Melissa or I met with an advisor at EV. We went through this process. It was exactly what I was looking for. It's personable, it's easy, go for it. People already have that idea when they're coming in if they're a direct referral to us. So that's beautiful. It's the same, when I'm speaking, and people get this when they're talking to me as an advisor. There's not a different hat that I wear. I can put a hat on anyway. There's not a different hat that I wear. There's nothing else that I can do. Like, this is just me. And so when I speak and when I present, it's very much the same. And so people get that vibe. They like the vibe and they're like, okay, well, can you do the work? Fortunately, we can also do the work, so that's good. But that's what happens. It is that initial, did you have a good experience here? We'll talk about, the investments and the planning process and all that stuff as it is relevant to you. But was the vibe right? Was that experience correct? Did it feel like, okay, this person and this firm can take care of what we need and is aligned with our values as a human? Okay, let's move forward. From there, it's a pretty easy process.
Yeah. It's funny, it's like the perfect example, like what you're describing is the perfect example of the attract repel. Zach and I talk a lot about like what you're putting out there in your brand and in your marketing and in kind of any
Yeah.
thought leadership that you're doing is really, it should be designed to be as genuine as possible because you really want to repel people who would not want to work with that and that wouldn't be a good fit for, so you don't waste time on them, but also attract the people who already resonates with so that you're just one step closer once you go one to one. So it's a perfect example of that.
Yep.
It's also the both sides of it, I would imagine, right? It's the human connection part you're alluding to. Do we
Mhm.
get along? Do we have sort of general philosophical alignment? Do I want to work with this person from both sides? Um, but do the services match the pain points as well? I would imagine that's sort of part of the discovery side for you is, and for them, right? Is this something, there's the human element, but do I have pain points that this person can solve for me? And I'm
Yep.
curious, just on the referral piece now, like as that wheel really starts turning, I would imagine people are saying about you personally, the connectedness stuff, right? This is someone and this team I get along with, I've had a great experience with. Is there anything you can pinpoint though on the services side or the pain point side where they're saying to these referral opportunities, like there's the broad value add you're delivering,
Yep.
but are there any things with the customer demographic you're dealing with where they're maybe specifically pointing to certain things that you're helping them solve?
I think that's such a great question. I think a lot of advisors and firm owners talk a lot about niching down kind of early on in their career. I've never been that person. It's kind of this blue ocean, like, here, everybody come on in. And that is because we focused a lot on the education side of the line first. So again, kind of that natural space that I fit into is that educator and that sort of presenter and facilitator. Um, Sometimes that works really well as an advisor, and sometimes it does not. For me, it's worked really, really well because I can kind of dilute that down to that sort of one-on-one kind of teaching sort of guidance thing. That feeling is what I think people get. Like, okay, like Melissa's fun and she's kind of funny sometimes, and like, okay, that's great. But also, yes, she can do the work. And that education first focus has been what's differentiated us a lot within our kind of micro region here, just outside of DC. But then also, we expanded throughout the country. It's been that like education is our first thing. The first E in EViE stands for education. Like we're putting it out there because that's what we do. So that's a big part of it. The other part, aside from kind of personality and vibe and all these sort of intangible things that we talk about, that are not impossible, but certainly hard to quantify for someone else trying to figure out how we grow and how we do this. Above and beyond that piece, I think as people are coming in, as referrals are coming in, we're also very much focused first, not on the asset management side, but on the planning side. I tell clients, like, yes, we want you to understand what's going on with your money so that you can be empowered and informed to make the right decisions. Planning is that for us. It's that foundational piece. I don't force clients into that first, but man, I wish they would go that. I wish all of them would go that direction first. We try and steer people in that direction because it's so much more powerful on the wealth management side and from a client retention and referral perspective. To start there, you get the full picture, you get that sort of more intimate relationship with a client, and then can build from there. So it's a combination of those things, that education first approach, and then also, yeah, just making sure that we're doing the planning piece first and then layering on the other services like wealth management that come after that.
That makes sense. I have so many questions about like where you are today, but I want to take a step
Yeah,
back for a second and just talk about why you started EViE to begin with. So really like what was
sure.
going on for you and why did you want to kind of start your own firm? I would love to
Yep,
hear that story. And also if you could highlight any like early struggles, it sounds like education. I'm
sure.
kind of curious because you mentioned that now it's a lot of referrals. So I am kind of curious about that early stage, if it has always been about education and that's always been what you've leaned on. But yeah, like tell us the story of how you got started and what was going on in the early days.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I mentioned, I've been in financial services for now about 20 years. Next year marks 20 years, and that is insanity to me. But here we are, still rocking and rolling, thank goodness. But within that 20 years, again, I've meandered a lot throughout my career. I started on the credit union side of financial services, an assistant to a financial planner. She left. I stayed, took over her book of business, and sort of like grew from there. I then went to a couple of sort of semi-independent firms, started a firm with another advisor, and in all of that experience, took all of the good stuff and all the not so good stuff, and some of the it's just questionable things behind the scenes in terms of who you partner with and kind of how all of these things work from a business perspective as a firm owner, and looking at, kind of all of those moving pieces and parts. Took all of those things, good and bad, and said, okay, this is the firm that I want to start from a values perspective. All the things I just talked about, that education first approach, that planning first approach, those pieces that are really important to me, that whole human financial planning, all that stuff. These are the tenets on which I started my firm. They're built into our name, like they're all there. And candidly, and I don't think I've ever said this out loud, I also started my firm out of spite, because it's a little grumpy with all the stuff that I experienced. All the good stuff was helpful to get me to the point of having a foundation for a high growth firm, which I created a little bit out of luck and a little bit out of understanding all the stuff that I experienced, good, bad, and ugly. And I wanted to show some specific folks that I could do it without them. And I could do it in a way that was a little bit different than what sort of the conventional and sort of norm was for financial firms, financial services firms at that time. So again, it's been a journey, and it's been lots of headaches and lots of hiccups and potholes along the way. But it is something that has, yeah, it's grown. I've grown. Like it's just been a beautiful thing. But in the early days, I think a lot of the struggle was not allowing that spite to then just be the focus, but instead taking some of those foundational pieces of, okay, this worked really well at this firm. Is it going to work in the thing that I created myself in this thing that is a little bit different than what the normal kind of conventional financial services firm is? Is it going to work? Okay, a lot of my struggles were this is not going to work. And so we got to figure out how we adjust this and how we get it correct or correct enough that we can move forward and grow. It's clunky. There's a lot of clunky processes in the beginning, still some, if I'm being transparent. But it's that kind of constant, like, all right, what's working, what's not working, and then how do we move it forward? So it was a lot of that in the beginning, just kind of brute force getting it done.
Yeah. I love a good, like, I don't want to call it a spite story, but I love this, like, I have something to prove. You know what I mean? Like, I'm here to prove something because it is those early stages are so hard. And if there's not like something motivating, if it was just like for fun, that would never, it's not always the most fun thing, you know? So how did you kind of
Yeah.
take that and use it as motivation? Like, how did you balance that? 'Cause it sounds like that was an early struggle. How did you kind of keep that as the motivator and keep that moving you forward without letting it take over kind of
Yeah.
your roadmap for how you were going to tackle certain like complexities or challenges?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's always been for me about the clients. I got into this work because my upbringing, I didn't have any of this. I didn't have any discussion of financial literacy or financial education. My parents didn't have that. We didn't have that coming up. And I didn't have that until I was a young adult. And even then, fumbled my way through all of that. And so, wanting to provide a safe space and a unbiased and independent space for clients to come in and say, okay, give me the financial education I need. Help me with this plan. Let's move forward and take this from financial planning 101 to 102 and 103. Like, let's do that. That's what brings me to this work every single day, to this day, which is great. And my hope is that that doesn't go away. I had to anchor myself in that pretty consistently as I was starting because it was an ongoing battle of like, okay, when things get difficult, I'm going to go back to this is the client work that I want to do and that I know that I'm good at and I know that people need. And so this is where I'm going to keep coming back to. All this other stuff on the business side, outsourcing stuff, delegating tasks, hiring, for goodness sake. I never in my life did I think that was going to be a thing I had to do or manage people. Like, oh, goodness. But all that stuff, okay, like, let's do this. When it gets hard, we need to focus on those things, but also, why am I doing it? Yes, it's the spite, but the clients come first. And that work is the thing that's actually motivating. So there's a lot of anchoring in that, even when it was difficult and felt like maybe spite was the wrong thing to anchor myself in initially.
I know, Kelsey, you're going to want to dive into the people management questions.
Oh my.
Um, but to click on Melissa, I'm very curious about this education component of the value prop. I
Sure.
think it is so strangely overlooked in our industry of, you know, we've got this. The sales narrative is you're coming to me because you don't get it. I'm gonna solve it for you because you don't get it, which I think is silly. And I
Well,
think you're
wait,
leaning.
but also there's that condescension. There is like a line of thinking that is a bit condescending around this too, where it's more of the marketing angle, but it's not actually part of the value prop. It's more like I educate. Like it's there's kind of a lot of that too. So it's almost like both things are happening in the
Well, and
industry. And then there's advisors who are actually one to one helping people learn about their financial life and helping people grasp and feel more comfortable.
And that's what I'm saying is the typical uh, value prop story is not that you don't get it, therefore I'm going to educate. It's you don't get it. You're hiring me. Don't worry about learning about it. That's what I mean. And so you saying not, I want you to get it. I want to be on the same page with you and have a deeper conversation about these things. Your personal backstory is what is sort of feeding that. I'm curious though, like in the discovery process, how do you pull out where to start from an educational standpoint, right? Because we always talk about in high school I learned how to cook chicken, but I didn't learn how to balance. None of us learned how to balance a checkbook or any of the fundamental stuff. So and by the way, there are wealthier people who are even in financial related fields that don't understand some of these fundamental things. So how do you pull out of people where they are in that journey of trying to learn more? What areas of education, how much they want it to be about learning versus, because there's some of it where, hey, I do want to learn about these fundamental things and I'm interested in these fundamental things, but also there's areas where I really don't want to learn and I do want to hand it to you. But I think that's where advisors often fail, is they don't go into that discovery moment and find that out. So anyway, I'm curious how you kind of pull that apart with your customers.
It is, it's a process like everything else. But that's why we start with that. I think every advisor has an introductory call, like having that, like, who are you? Here's who we are. Like, that's not a new thing, certainly. But I don't have an agenda, and people are probably going to freak out, but I don't have an agenda for my introductory call. That doesn't exist. I don't send clients anything, which could potentially freak them out a little bit, but it's meant to be just like, no, we're going to have a conversation. And in 19 and a half years of doing this, I figured out how to, as we just start talking, to understand kind of where they're at with sort of baseline, okay, education and on the financial front. Okay, if they're saying, well, I always start with, tell me what prompted you to reach out today. And then they'll sometimes say, well, I need a financial plan. We just go on from there, like, well, what does it mean to have a financial plan? So I will just keep asking them kind of these probing questions, say, okay, but in a conversational way. So it's not okay, what's your income? Please tell me what your net
Yeah.
worth is. We don't go down that road. It's just say, hey, tell me who you are. And in that, I can also usually pretty quickly glean, okay, you're at, we're at this level of understanding on some things, or this is the level that you are allowing me to see that you are understanding these things, which is also okay. And then I simply ask the question when I say, okay, education is one of our things, like that's where we start. Most prospects know that as they're coming in. And so when we have that discussion, that introductory discussion, I'm like, okay, on the planning process, this is what it looks like. We start to assess where you're at financially. We look at your state of the union. These are the steps that we take. And then there's a heavy to maybe not so heavy dose of education along the way. These are the verbatim words that I say. Nobody take this, please. But these are the verbatim words that I say. So they're a light or heavy dose of education or something in between. That's up to you. And then clients are like, okay, well, what does that mean? And then we'll start talking about it to say, we can go into the weeds on what your investment portfolio looks like right now from a planning perspective. We can look at that. We can go into the weeds on all the different options you have on retirement accounts, on all the different ways you can save for your kids' college. We can go into the weeds on all of this. Or we can talk through, here's what it means to save for retirement, and here's how you do that. And then if there are specific things that you're like, hold on, this is interesting to me, let's go deeper there. That's what we'll do. I leave it up to the client in most instances. When I see that there's a gap in, hey, you don't understand what the difference between you've got two components in your 401k, for instance. We got the pre-tax and then we got the Roth. If that's new information, okay, I know where we're starting there in terms of, all right, we need to do some of that baseline education for some of those fundamentals before we start getting into, here's how we talk about tax loss harvesting in an intelligent way. Let's step up to that before we get there. So it's about that conversation at the beginning and then just leaving the door open. I want clients to, when I say I create a safe space for clients, and that's what we try and do here at the firm, that's not just lip service. It is truly like, no, be in this space, be on the Zoom, be in the conference room and chat, like just talk. And if I allow you to do that as a client or a prospect, you're going to share with me some insights that you probably didn't know, but that I'm going to be able to say, okay, this is how we start to tailor what your plan is or what your strategy is from an education standpoint. So, really long answer to your question, but that's kind of how I approach it.
It's magical. And by the way, clip it. This that moment. What you're talking about, I think, is there's like 5 minutes or 10 or 20, whatever it is, that is like the magic moment that advisors very often miss the opportunity to gather those insights because they just pull out the checklist, discovery checklist, and what's your income. And there's this presumption that they are cool with the process, that this is what the value is, this is what you're going to get on the other side, as opposed to just, you're really highlighting the value of conversation and the open-endedness and the insights that you're able to put, like the information you get in those first 5 minutes just by doing it that way is gold for that relationship, right? I mean, it's stuff that I always talk about. You get like 10 years into a relationship with a client, and you miss that like first window, and you just put them on the assembly line.
Yep.
And it fundamentally, it deteriorates over time, and you're never quite in alignment with each other. So what you're describing, I just want to, red underline like that. That moment is so, so important. So anyway, thank you for
Well, I
sharing that.
think that one other
Yeah,
thing I would
absolutely.
love to hear your take on, like building on what Zach just said, is I've heard a lot from especially advisors earlier in their career about like that discomfort in the gray area of those
Mm,
conversations and not necessarily having as many years of experience just in responding to people and just kind of meeting them where they're at. So any advice you could give to someone who's earlier on who wants to take more of that approach but has that anxiety around feeling like they need to kind of control the conversation or control that first experience because they don't know where it's going to go if they just leave it open ended.
yep, understood. And there's a completely valid concern from someone who knew that this was the way and this was the path early on, but didn't have any idea how to do that. Candidly, I'm also very much an introvert, so like just having open-ended discussions is like not my jam. It stresses me out tremendously, which again, this whole career has been a whole journey. Anyway, but on that side of the line, figuring out what some of those cues are and just practice. And that sounds crazy, but just allow those conversations to happen. See what it's like to let your sales manager or whomever is teaching you or guiding you give you the information, but maybe step away from that checklist, maybe move away from that agenda for just a second and just be fully present with a prospect or a client and just like, yeah, what's up? Tell me what's going on financially speaking. This is the other piece. If you're afraid that it's going to continue to go down that line, that is, I say this probably 30 times a day. Like, tell me what's new, financially speaking. Give me the update, financially speaking, on what we're talking about. Let's keep it at least in this lane. It's going to meander a little bit because people are people. But if we can just put some guardrails there, and people will naturally figure out what their own guardrails are. Mine, it's that. Like, financially speaking, I'm okay with people meandering a bit because this is what I do naturally. So it's fine. They want to talk about, work stress, or if they want to talk about the vacation they just had or the vacation they now can't take or like whatever it is, they want to talk about these things. Cool. I'm here for that. I'm also nosy. So give me all the details. I'm happy to hear all of the things. Like this is great. Um, and also, well, give it a couple minutes and then yep, direct it back to like, okay, got it. That vacation sounds awesome. What do we want to plan for this year? And just back we go into that kind of conversational tone. So it's challenging, and you can get really long meetings at the very beginning, but then with that practice, you start to kind of get in that groove. So yeah, it takes some effort to allow this to be the strategy that you take with clients.
The thing that always, because it was hard for me as well, right?
Yeah.
To especially when you're learning all the sort of practitioner side.
Yep.
What if they ask a question I don't have an answer for? I need to keep it on the rails so I can just hit my talking points. But
Yep.
I try to remind myself, like, that's what they're in the human connection, conversational stuff is actually what they're seeking. They're more anxious if all of a sudden they're on an assembly line and just feeding you data points that you're asking them to give them or to
Right.
give you. So that always helped me, right? They want this. They don't want the checklist experience.
Yeah.
They'll be more comfortable if you make it a conversation.
Yep. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Is that whole human approach in financial planning? That's what I mean by that. It's like we're not just like we're looking at every aspect of your financial life. No, we're looking at you as an actual human.
Right.
Yeah, we all just need to talk it out a little bit. And so that's where we start.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, those are great tips. So I guess going back to kind of the growth story leading up
Mhm.
to today, maybe if you could just highlight like one of your biggest growth challenges from what we just discussed, which was very early days until where you are now and how you run your process and how your team works
Yeah.
today. What's something that stands out as one of the biggest kind of growth challenges and how you actually kind of cleared that hurdle?
Yeah. So I think for me, it was twofold. It was I think, very conventional speed bump or slowdown to growth, which is prospecting, um, finding people to talk to. That has always been a challenge, I think, for every single advisor who's out there. And that certainly was something that, yeah, so I'm talking about all these referrals now, and like, oh, we're in this sweet spot of financial advisor life, which is true. And it's taken 19 and a half years. It's taken, about 15 of those to get to a point where that's the norm. And so when I was coming up the in the different firms that I was in and then starting my own, I always knew this education piece and this conversational piece and all of that was kind of the way that I did this. Everyone told me it was not correct, but this is how I did it. So we were going to move forward there. But in doing that, that didn't provide me any people to talk to. So I had to get out there in front of folks pretty early on. And again, kind of a nod back to that introvert comment that I made earlier, also not a super easy thing for me to do, at least coming up, to go out to like a kind of networking thing or something that was very like, again, kind of conventional financial advisor approach to go to a chamber of commerce event or go to this happy hour and just like hand out some business cards. Could never. I would have a panic attack in front way. So like it's not my thing. So I had to figure out, how do I say the things that I need to say, allow people to see what I know and know how to do to get them to come to me. So that then created this whole machine of like, how do I do this? I started with the one to many marketing. So doing a lot of educational workshops. I also did those differently to where it was truly an educational workshop and that it was a class. It wasn't a surf and turf dinner with an invite and a wholesaler. Nope. I was me talking for 4 hours, not straight. There were breaks and snacks, but 4 hours of just going through. Here's what it means to build out a financial plan. Here's what it is to have a retirement plan. And I did this for 3 years, on to about three times a year, did this big class at a library early on in my career and just sent out direct mail invites to have folks come in, sit in this class, and do the work. And then I'd offer a free one-on-one. I did that for a handful of years as part of that kind of one to many approach. And it wasn't one to a lot. It was one to many, and like it was still just a couple of people showing up at the library. So it was still kind of one client after one client, which is a slow go. But it worked really well and allowed for that very slow process of, okay, bring in one client, treat them well, do the work really well, and then have them be that voice for you so that those referrals will come in. And advisors don't have years and years and years and years and years to allow that to grow. So, in addition to that, I also did some kind of just more traditional marketing. I did a bunch of trade shows. I'd set up a table at business expo. I did bridal shows. Those were, I think, some of my favorite days. I showed up at a wedding expo and just sat there and said, "Come talk to me about money." People would
You're
sign up,
so
and then we
smart.
do a one-on-one. And then people would come in and get their Roth IRA set up, and set up a 529 over here, and off we go to the races. Oh, so it's again been a journey, but my whole career has been, all right, I know I need to fill this pipeline. I know that I'm not going to do that one to one. So how do I get the voice out there, the stuff out there so that people will come to me and say, okay, let's do this work. And it works. And again, some of that's luck, and a lot of it is, again, just brute force. I lots and lots and lots of meetings to this day on my calendar, and I feel like it will always be that way. It's just blocks and blocks and blocks of client meetings. We have lots of households and lots of folks because of this approach, but it works really well. We fill the pipeline in ways that are a little bit not conventional, and then do the same process over and over and over again to build that foundation of solid clients who love us, who love the process, who love the education, who love all the stuff. And then they are now our little army of folks out there saying, hey, go talk to Melissa. Hey, go talk to the people at EViE so that they can do the same thing they did for us. It is a long process to get to that point, but there are so many ways that that can happen now, especially not in the, I feel like I'm now, which is also crazy. I feel like now I'm like an old school advisor, and like oh, I set up a table at a trade show. Like that's insane. Who would do that? 10 years ago, it was revolutionary. Like,
Yeah.
or just, yeah, handing out ring pops at a wedding show and just having people sign up for a free financial analysis. The most creative thing any advisor has ever done in her lifetime. And now that feels outdated. And so it's keeping up with, okay, what do we do next? And what do we do next? We've started to move on to some different ways to market and to make sure that our name's getting out there. But it was a lot of that coming up, and then just trusting the process that we could do the work and push people forward into being clients.
We always highlight with advisors we talk to that are sort of earlier in their journey
Mhm.
that, the level of scrappiness that you're describing,
Yeah.
you can have a great idea of what your customer demo is going to be, what your service offering is. You can have
Yep.
an awesome website, but there is an initial level of scrappiness and just figuring it out for yourself too. I think there's always that sort of like, solve that thing if I pay a few, something or something where some third party is going to solve this for me. And often it's, yeah, you know better than you think from a sales
Yep.
perspective,
Yep.
and you just kind of have to go do it. And then the second point is spot on as well. Okay, and then what is the new version of that, right? And
Yeah.
now I have the referral flywheel, but how do I, have the pipeline continue to refill? What are the tactics that are going to work now?
Yep.
So yeah, I think it's scary, right? Advisors, there's so much you have to be building and doing.
Yeah.
And that's why I
Yeah.
think Kelsey and I often sort of reiterate with advisors, don't do all that and then not do that sort of scrappy build sales momentum part
Yeah.
to get the wheel going. So clearly you
Yep.
did
Yeah,
that.
and I would argue first, to some extent, even now, if you're very early, like those more scrappy in-person tactics are huge because
Yeah.
an advisor who's a little bit ahead in the journey is likely not going to do that. So you
Right.
connecting, it's kind of like with seeds, like we have our most success at conferences because we don't have huge name recognition yet. So it's like if I meet
Yeah.
you at a conference, you connect with me and you're going to trust me more than just seeing an ad on LinkedIn
Yeah.
or something. You know what I mean? So I think
Right.
even today, if you're super early, like, yeah, go to the library, host a free session, like
Yeah.
just talk to people who might be customers so that you know who they are and what they're looking for and what they're struggling with. So I love this story. This is amazing. It's like the perfect flywheel story representation where it just kind of slowly builds and gets easier and easier, which I think is
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so we are getting really in the weeds on some of this compared to the agenda for this call. So I think what we should do is we should talk about a more recent growth challenge. So something that's
Sure.
come up for you. Now you have this file, you're getting referrals. So what have you run into lately? Like where are you at in terms of challenges and what is something that you had to do to kind of tackle it to kind of keep moving forward more recently?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think one of the more interesting challenges from a growth perspective lately has been Bringing folks in, not from a prospecting or pipeline perspective, but other humans, the other side of the human approach to this firm, which is my team, um, and just building a cohesive, healthy, mostly happy, or at least mostly content team most of the time. So like that's the jam. This is what we're aiming for. If it's better than that,
Mhm.
which most of the time it is, beautiful. Um, so yes, in figuring out all this stuff with the firm and like, okay, we've got it. And we're at this point where like the what is mostly the biggest hurdle in an advisor's sort of growth track on the prospecting and that referral sort of sweet spot got there. As a firm owner, good grief, what a different journey it has been. Oh God. So it's been that. It's been okay. How do we've got these difficult parts set up on the prospecting side, for the personnel side, for the support side, for bringing on new advisors, which we just did. Like, how do we make sure that that's correct and that that is moving us forward in the correct way? That has been the biggest challenge, and it's not like, "Oh, it was just this tiny little personnel thing that like, okay, well, communication was a little bit off." No, it is literally a daily new task, and again, new non-hat that I'm wearing that we have to put on and continue to do and cultivate every single day. And so that in addition to all the other stuff on just being an advisor, it has been, I think, the biggest challenge so far of my career. I'm so grateful for it, though, because I am also growing in different ways. I am learning in different ways. It is such a cool place to be. It's also really exhausting. And so, with my team lately, it has been, I've always structured bringing folks in um, as okay, when I was young and scrappy, younger and scrappy and scrappier, I guess I'm still both of those things to a certain extent, but younger and scrappier coming up, what would I want as an advisor, as a, what would I want in a firm? I'd want support. I want to not feel like I'm on an island. I want a process that works and I want a pipeline. And that may seem selfish, but I want a pipeline. And so, for all of that, how do I find those people and bring those folks in, but also support them with the team that we have and the staff that we have? So it's been figuring out what that balance is while also recognizing that my team's also human. Like we're all human. We're all going through this crazy shift, just generally speaking. Um, and work is hard. It's challenging. And so making sure that everyone is feeling as good as they can, getting the work done as good as they can, and serving clients as good as they can, that's been the biggest challenge for me behind the scenes lately. We've been working on that. We just recently had a actually lovely retreat. Couple. This sounds very fancy. It was not, but a retreat, a very quiet lake house in the middle of nowhere for a couple of days, just bringing the team together. We're all mostly remote, and so bringing together in the same place for a couple of days is really helpful to just say, all right, where are we at? Like, let's talk about some things. Let's figure out what we need to fix, what's working well, what our goal is going to be moving forward, and then who needs what to get that done. So making sure that we've got that time and space for those discussions too is really, really helpful for us as a team and moving that forward. But from a growth perspective, that's been probably the biggest challenge recently.
This is like my favorite topic with when I talk to advisors. I just love this topic because so many advisors are, it almost seems like the most anxious about the team side of this. Like they see themselves as like, this is my baby and I love running my business. But then as soon as
Yeah.
they hit their capacity, there's that like, ugh, like, do I really want to build this bigger and add this complexity? And like,
Yeah.
where am I going to go from here? What's the next step? So, are there any unexpected kind of takeaways or learnings that you've had recently as you've been kind of navigating these challenges that you would share with other advisors who are in a similar place?
I think it goes back to really what drives me as an advisor and working with clients. That thing that works so well, that conversational thing that works so well. Well, not surprisingly, it works really well with your team too. And I think sometimes we forget that as like oh, I'm the boss or I'm the CEO or I'm the lead advisor, whatever your title is at your firm, or I'm the owner, whatever it is. We're still all kind of trying to figure this out together. And so I've always been wobbled a little bit, but I've always mostly been on that plane with my team to say, look, like, tell me what's going on. Let's just have an open and honest, even if it's hard, conversation about what's needed, what's right, what's wrong, and what we can move forward together. That has been the most important part of building this team and keeping the team. It's not always perfect, and it's really hard work, but this helps.
Mhm. I love that you're calling that out because I feel like communication and connection and the ability to just listen and be comfortable with that
Yeah,
listening is a skill that you could just as a business grows, like, at startups, you hear this all the time. Leaders in startups, like, the ground is changing under you and your team all the time, and those skills are
yep,
things you can use forever. Like, as the business
yeah,
grows, you will need them more and more and more at every stage going forward, internally and externally, so I love that you called that out. So kind of moving on to just some, like, tactical takeaways, I think, for
yeah.
advisors, maybe you could share just like any, like maybe 2, 3 pieces of advice, even 1 if it's a really good one, piece of advice that you would share, with someone who's kind of in a similar boat to where you have been in the past. So maybe a few steps behind you. What is something that you would share, just quick, very tactical piece of advice?
Yeah, I think it is. One of the best pieces of advice I received as an advisor was the ones who hold their breath long enough will make it. So that is very dramatic and also a little bit on kind of the old school vein of just financial advising. But stick with me for a second. That has been my mantra and sort of my foundational, again, kind of anchor. Like, okay, there are things that are going to be hard, and there are things that maybe aren't going to make sense, and there are things that are just going to throw a wrench in what plans you had for growth, even for stability, for any of those things. It is always a ride, but having been through this and still going, like we're not done yet. Like I still got a lot more growth to go, and I'm looking forward to a lot of that. I still have to anchor myself in, okay, it's not going to be perfect, and I don't have to do everything on my own. That, Kelsey, to your point on like hanging on to that stuff when you get at that kind of capacity level, oh, it's tough. And you get that friction where it's like, oh, I got to go. I got to go. I got to let some of this go, let some of it go because the moment you do, you just you feel like you can move again. And that is a bit of a woo-woo takeaway, but that is the best one that I have. So it's that stuff's going to be hard, and you don't have to hold on to all of it yourself. It's not necessary to be successful or to grow.
Yeah. I love that. That's a great piece of advice. And it goes back to what you're saying about like the new challenges that present. So now not only are you in client meetings all day, you have to solve people problems internally. You have
Yeah,
to figure out a talent pipeline. You have to figure out how to take what makes you great and translate that to a newer advisor who's joining you. There are so many things that require a step back. And if you never let anything go, you have no
yeah,
space or mental capacity to do any of that problem solving. So that is a great tip. I've never heard it framed that way, but I like that. I'm going to start using that.
yeah.
Um, and then any specific, like, tools, processes, hires, like, anything that was just a game changer that you wanna share?
Yeah. So I'm biased, but I have the best team, hands down. A lot of it is because we had some of those introductory discussions and did this whole process to make sure we're all on the same page before bringing folks on. So, I'm really, 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 really grateful for that. And it's difficult. That hiring process is challenging. People are challenging. Humans are challenging. So when that's not just kind of that stars in alignment kind of thing, which I feel like a little bit happened with me and my team, um, look for tools that you can delegate out. Good grief. I've done that for portfolio management. I've done that for note taking. I've done that for some like scheduling and task management. Goodness gracious, there are lots of tools out there that can help free up some time. And even if it's not time, free up some brain space, which can be really helpful in doing your job really well. So that would be a
Mhm.
bit of advice.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. So,
Yep.
looking ahead, what's next for EV? What's next for you? And wait, before we go on, what does EV stand for?
Yeah.
Because I had no idea that
Yeah.
EV actually stood for something, and you've referenced it a couple times, but I didn't want to
Yeah.
interrupt. So, what's
Yeah.
next
No,
for you
totally
guys? And
fine.
also, what does EV mean? We should have started there.
Yeah. That's okay. I usually start there, so that was my bad. But EV stands for Education, Vitality, Independence, and Empowerment. Um, and those are the tenets that I am. That's what I live off of in my life, but also for financial planning. Like goodness gracious, what a great set of things to be focused on and to move forward in. So that's what EV stands for. What's next for us is more of all of that. So all of those pieces is just continuing to move that forward. We've brought on some additional staff. We're growing from a client perspective, from a household perspective, from an AUM perspective, it's all going up, which is great and yeah, an interesting place to be. So I'm excited for what that looks like for us, and we'll see what the year brings.
That's awesome. We'll have to check back in with you in a little bit and see how it's going.
A takeaway for me, Melissa, is
Mhm.
there's this theme here of communication. And just on the internal side, as you talk about, bringing in team members, Kelsey and I, this is all we talk about. Of I have in my head sometimes as a leader that everybody gets what we're aiming at. Everybody knows what the vision is and exactly what we're supposed to be working on. And go figure, that's not always the case. No one's fault other than, as the leader, assuming things are clear when maybe they're not. And obviously, they're constantly changing. So for me and what you're sharing, that's a big takeaway of how you've been successful is, as you're growing a team, you're describing the retreat. I'm sure there were lots and lots and lots of conversations about what you're building toward
Yep.
that, are maybe some things in those discussions you thought everybody knew already that maybe wasn't the case. So I'm always finding that, right? That having more communication and kind of digging through issues and what we're solving for is always worth it, going a level deeper on all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's time and it's effort and it's energy that sometimes we don't always have, but it is the thing that pushes the machine forward. And it's so, so crucial.
Awesome.
Yes, that's great. Okay, my favorite part. It's not my favorite part. The lightning round. This is where
Here
we
we
have
go.
three
I'm ready.
questions, and you have to
Yep.
answer them so fast.
Okay.
Otherwise, we will cut you off. No, I'm just joking. We
No,
won't. So take your time, but it is supposed to be quick answers. So the first question is,
got it.
what should
Mhm.
advisors stop wasting time on, according to you?
Yes. Note taking. That doesn't mean don't take notes. That means use an AI note taker if you can, and it's approved through your compliance department. Please do that thing because it saves me so many hours every single week. It's beautiful. That's it.
Okay, I love that. That is a great piece of advice. What was the decision that you made in the last year that had the biggest impact on your firm's growth?
We transitioned to, well, two transitions. One from BD space to RIA space. Huge transition, huge journey. Still going through it. Best decision, hands down. So that was one. Second, which then allowed us to do that, was partnership with Seeds. So we'll kind of be moving forward there on delegating out some of the things that we are just no longer doing, which is that in-house kind of portfolio management. So getting some experts on the team to do that, which is where we're at now.
No, we love that answer. That one could go more than 30 seconds. No, I'm just joking. I'm
Sorry.
just joking. Okay, thank you for sharing that one. Next one. What is one piece of conventional wisdom in this industry that you think is you disagree with?
Yes. I think that this idea of you have to niche down in who you're targeting in terms of your demographics and your clients. You have to do that as early as possible to be successful in your career is completely false. I think big pipeline at the beginning and then niching it down over time makes a lot of sense and is a lot more realistic for advisors.
hmm I love that. I actually have an idea for another podcast where we do you and then an advisor who really believes in that because I know one who's grown really successfully with that approach. And we talk through the
Understood?
different because there's so many similar tactics. Now I'm extending this past 30 seconds. There's so many similar tactics and it doesn't really matter either way as long as you're doing the right fundamental things. But I love that answer. Okay. Final takeaway, Zach, unless you have anything else, or Melissa, but we want to know where listeners can follow along, where to best find you if there are advisors who want to reach out or network, or any clients who are potential clients who are listening who would like to find you and talk to you.
Absolutely. So we, fortunately, because of our great team, keep the website up to date, moment to moment, as best we can. We've got events listed there, lots of resources where I'm going to be kind of speaking out and about. It's on the website. It's evfinancial.com. Pretty simple there. And then for me, some of my thoughts also kind of where I'm bouncing around and then some insights on team and kind of where we're at. LinkedIn is the best place for that. I am the only Melissa Reaktenwalt. That's Reak. Yeah, that's all you need. I'm the only Melissa Reaktenwalt on there. At least I should be. So easy to find. But that's us.
And we will link to all of that in the show notes so that you can just scroll on down. Well, thank you so much, Zach. Anything else from you?
This was fantastic, Melissa. As Kelsey and I, we could talk about this stuff for hours. So we'll let you get back to building your business and all the things you're working on. But we really appreciate your time and insights. Kelsey, what else? We're good to land the plane, as we say?
Land the plane, Zach.
Land
Let's
the
land the plane.
If anybody hasn't checked out Seeds, go do so, www.seedsinvestor.com. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.